Hello, Peter.
Hello, Ruth.
Yeah, thanks for participating in my interview project.
Well, thank you for asking me to do it. I'm very happy to.
How did you first encounter the Alexander technique? What were you doing at the time? What's your background? Maybe a bit about that.
Okay, to put it in context, I went to music college and I started practicing a lot. And I'd always been taught that if things aren't going well, you work harder. So I was working very hard, doing a lot of practice, and I got into pain. And so I started to look for a solution. And the doctor wasn't, although I'm sure they were trying to be as helpful as possible, they were suggesting maybe massage or even chiropractic. They looked at the possibility of finding the right painkillers, and it really wasn't helping enough. And then I was talking to a friend after a few months at music college. I was saying, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to be a musician. It was as bad as that.
Oh.
So my symptoms had got very debilitating in that not only was there pain, which was distracting, sort of neck and shoulders and back pain, but my vision started to be affected.
Oh.
So you can imagine how difficult it is to play music if the lines and dots are moving around on the page in front of you. So I had permission in rehearsals at music college. If I couldn't carry on, I could put the bass down and leave the rehearsal and come back when I'd recovered a bit. But this friend who I was playing chamber music with, Alexander Bailey, who's a really fine cellist, he's rather well known now, and he said, have you tried the Alexander technique? And I thought he was making a joke because his name's Alexander. So I said, oh, no, Sandy, tell me what I've got to do. And he said, no, I'm having an Alexander every week, an Alexander lesson, which puts me back in shape to play the cello. And that I feel great for 2 or 3 days, and then it gets a little bit less good, and then I have another Alexander lesson, and then my playing comes back and I feel comfortable. So I thought, well, that sounds worth trying out. And that's what I did.
So who was that?
Well, I went for a consultation with Dr. Wilfred Barlow. So number 3 Albert Court. And he put me in front of his grid. Fortunately, the book had already been published, so there aren't pictures of me semi-naked in the book. And he said, well, I can see why you've got problems. And that was music to my ears, because I wanted someone to say they knew what the problem was. And he recommended that I had 2 or 3 lessons a week. And I said, that could be quite expensive. And he said, no, I know someone who's just qualified as an Alexander teacher who's very good, and I would recommend trying him. And that was Robin Simmons.
Oh.
So I was having 2 or 3 lessons a week from Robin Simmons. And after a couple of months, I was thinking, this is beginning to help. This seems like the solution. So I had a whole chunk of lessons, maybe 60 lessons. And by that time I was thinking, yes, I can study. So the Alexander technique made it possible for me to study the double bass.
So it saved your whole career, basically.
Yeah, looking at it in this way, it certainly did.
Wow. And there wasn't Alexander in college at that time?
No, there was in Sandy Bailey's college. He was at the Royal College of Music. I was at Trinity College of Music, where they didn't have Alexander. Not then. They do now. And what a shame. They didn't have it.
Yeah.
But Robin was very reasonable. I think I was paying £2 a lesson, which
that's all right.
Seems such good fun now to think of the lessons for £2 a time. But we had this arrangement. It was rather nice because Robin was interested in music, and I'd get tickets. I'd get a free ticket for him for any concerts I was doing, and he would come along, and then in the next lesson he'll tell me what he was seeing during the concert.
Yeah.
Which was ideal, because if I was under any sort of pressure in the concert, then he might have been seeing stuff which was more
that's
useful.
That's a win-win.
Yeah. So that was a good relationship. It worked well.
Okay, and then you started your music career, or?
It's not really that order. So the comfort made it possible for me to play well enough to eventually become a professional double bass player. And I was just really grateful. I was thinking, Alexander, what does Alexander do? Well, it gets you out of pain.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. And I was grateful that I could just play enough to be a professional, earn my living. And after I'd been working for 10 years or so, so my early 30s, I was thinking, this is fine. I'm really pleased to be earning my living as a musician. It's what I wanted to do. The quality of the work I was doing wasn't very high quality. And so it was a little bit frustrating in that I felt like I had more potential as a musician, but maybe my bass playing really wasn't as good as it needed to be. And so I thought it would be great to be an Alexander teacher as well as a double bass player. And wouldn't it be incredible to save someone's career like my career was saved?
Yeah.
Which made me just sort of feel rather positive about the dual career that might be available if I trained. And I remember saying to Eleanor Ribeaux, because I trained with Eleanor and Peter Ribeaux, their school in Fulham, fantastic. I remember saying to Eleanor, I wonder if you'll be happy if I carry on playing. I need to play, really, to earn my living and pay for your course. And she said, I'd like you to carry on playing. It's really good to have something like music, which is so challenging, to apply these ideas to. And that wasn't the response I got from all of the schools. So some schools were talking about maybe you'd have to either cut down or stop playing for a time.
Oh, so you checked out different schools.
I did. I went to all the London schools and had a look. But Eleanor she was really positive about carrying on playing. And I said, I expect my playing will go downhill a bit even, because I won't have time to practice. Up to that point, I had been practicing a lot to keep my playing at a standard that I felt was professional. And she said, well, let's see what happens. During those 3 years, I would say that my playing improved more than it did when I was at music college. So that was astonishing. So with less practice time, virtually no practice time, just working time, I'd go to the school, then I'd jump in the car, drive to a rehearsal, do a show, go back, drop into bed, get up, 9 o'clock the next day, another day at the school. And so it was a packed 3 years, or 3.5 years, because I didn't manage to complete it in 3 years with some trips away doing music. And during that time, when there was sort of virtually no practice time, sure enough, my playing got better. And so I started to think, so how could this be? And it's pretty obvious now, looking back on it, that my problem was I knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it because I didn't have the coordination between mind and body. So the Alexander teacher training being so intense and bringing your attention to so many things from different angles, I started to understand where my problems as a musician, as a double bass player were. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. Alexander Technique and Ellie and Peter. It's great.
So it's quite challenging to do the training and work as a musician at the same time. How did you manage that?
Well, it is challenging because all your time is filled up. It meant that there's not much time for anything else. So my life was doing the training and being a musician, really. And so very little social time. But I wasn't living a life as a recluse or anything. But it's just a commitment, and it is possible. Having said that, at the college, we've had people who've trained to be an Alexander teacher during their undergraduate degree. So it's not impossible.
Yeah.
If you really want to do something, it's you could say it's 16 hours a week, or you could say it's only 16 hours a week.
Yeah. So, and at that time, were you with Judith already?
Interesting. I went on a concert date to, I think the first time we met was at the Kenwood Bowl, so on Hampstead Heath, and we were playing together. So we sort of saw each other, and then it turned out that we were both going to Chesterfield to play a concert, and it was just two basses on that concert. So we ended up going to Chesterfield and read off the same music. And then I can't remember if it was Judith or me who said, do you want to go for a walk before the concert? I think there's a river there. We went and walked by the river, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah, so you're married to an Alexander teacher and another double bass player.
Exactly, yeah. And on that walk, the topic of Alexander came up, and Judith said, well, I've just enrolled on an Alexander teacher training. And I said, that's incredible. I've just enrolled on an Alexander teacher training. And she went to Mr. MacDonald's school.
Yeah.
And so in my lineage, I'm one more step away from Alexander, because Ellie and Peter were trained by Patrick MacDonald.
Yeah.
So we come from the same side. If there is a spectrum, we're on the same side of the spectrum in our training. I don't know that you'd recognize the MacDonald and Ribeaux influence. Maybe you would in some ways, in the way that I teach.
Yeah, but of course, over time, you develop your own way of teaching.
And there's been a lot of time.
Yes.
Yes, 36 years ago I qualified.
And ever since, you've been playing and teaching the Alexander technique?
Yeah. So the balance between the two has changed. So I was doing, well, it was probably more like 50-50 to begin with. And now I do very little playing. It seems like I just come out of retirement once a year to play with my son's group. Our son's group, Harry, is a gamba player. Really happy to do it. Apollo's Cabinet, really wonderful Baroque group.
Yeah, I read that you played with a lot of very famous quartets.
That's right, yeah.
Over the years.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that I got into the chamber music scene through the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. That's where I started playing with people who were string quartet players. And because Neville Marriner created a string group for his orchestra just by booking 4 or 5 string quartets. So they were all players who played with that sort of interactive sense and extraordinary technique and wonderful, wonderful string sound. The instruments, the players who were in the quartets had to suggest which bass players they knew who might be appropriate. And there was Dave Smith, who was in the Alberni string quartet. He put my name forward. And so I was very fortunate. So I started being known as someone who plays chamber music.
But apparently you play everything from Baroque to contemporary music. The Arditis are in there, I saw.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That was great playing with the Arditi quartet.
I saw them several times.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was cutting edge new music.
Yeah.
But then the group that I was a founder member of the Schubert Ensemble piano quintet, and we commissioned dozens of new pieces. So
great.
we were creating cutting-edge new music.
Fantastic.
And I played with a group called Dream Tiger when I was at music college, actually. So that was music with ink fresh on the page, and quite often working with the composers. So I remember working with Xenakis. He was in Paris. He came over to work with Dream Tiger.
Really?
And so we played some of his music. There's a quartet, Morsimer, A Morsimer, Matter, Antimatter. It's sort of really heavy. Well, all of his music's really heavy. And well, I was young. I had a van, an ex-GPO van for my bass, and he had to move around to various different venues in London. So I ended up driving Xenakis around in my car, which was quite an experience, because I don't know if you know, he was hit by shrapnel and half of his face was missing. So extraordinary looking man and incredibly intense conversation. So I'm not sure how well I held up my side of the conversation, but I really felt like I'd had a week's intense experience when he was in town.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love the thought of playing contemporary music. If we don't play contemporary music, who's going to do it?
Yes.
No one's going to wait for 100 years and then discover a piece that was written 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It's got to be played by the living musicians. So I always thought, count me in. It's a great intellectual challenge to
I love it.
play contemporary music. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So many musicians have specialized on one period, let's say. How did it come about? And did it have to do with somehow indirectly with the Alexander technique, maybe?
No, I don't see any connection there, really. No, I think Alexander technique facilitates expressing yourself. I didn't realize that when I was having my first lessons, but when I did the training, it became more and more obvious that if you want to be able to express yourself, then you need mind-body coordination.
Yeah.
So it's all very well to get out of pain, and who doesn't want to get out of pain if they're in pain? But the potential of the technique I think is far more important than that a musician can actually express themselves in the concert.
Yeah.
So that you can actually go into an interactive situation with other musicians and the audience and understand a little bit about how to handle that challenge.
Yeah. But it's also about openness and non-judgmentalness, isn't it? So that's why I thought there might be a connection. So being open to all sorts of things, different kinds of music.
Oh, yeah. Which I sort of feel I am. I think if you look back at my discography, then you can see that is the case.
Yeah.
If I had to listen to one genre of music, it would be opera, I think. And so that is such a contrast from the sort of bass playing you have to do for contemporary music, or what was contemporary music during my big playing years.
It's different skills, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But super satisfying when you build a bass line in a Mozart opera in the way that supports the singers and the wind players.
And maybe back to the Alexander teaching.
Yep.
So after you qualified as an Alexander teacher, did you immediately start having clients, or did you apply it in your working environment?
Well, I was incredibly lucky. Everything in my life has just been landing in the plate in front of me. I haven't had to try and do anything in a way. And the way it happened was I think 2 months before I qualified, I got a phone call from the Royal College of Music And they said, we've got a crisis here. We need a double bass professor immediately. And so I said, well, what's the situation? And they said, well, the professor who was teaching most of the double bass students, I think he had 8 out of 9 students. He'd gone on holiday, unfortunately, had a heart attack in the swimming pool and died. So it was a terrible shock it was a shock for the LPO, but it was also because he was a principal bass there. And it was a shock for all of his students too. Yeah. And so they were looking for someone to finish the academic year off for them with the students. And I said, well, I think this could be a fit because I'm just about to finish my Alexander teacher training, so I'll have more hours in my week. And so I stepped from there straight into the Royal College of Music double bass teaching. And once I got there, because I was recently qualified, I was full of the zeal of the recently qualified Alexander teacher. So I thought that, we can change the world here, guys. So let me get my hands on those students. And so I tried to promote the technique to become part of the degree.
Fantastic.
There were Alexander lessons going on, but it was treated, the attitude was something which I just didn't understand. Maybe there's a merit in it, and I'm sure whoever had put that attitude forwards saw the merit in making it esoteric knowledge. So really the lessons were available, but they weren't advertised.
Oh.
So the professors, some of the professors knew that there was an Alexander teacher, but what was necessary was for the professor to recommend that the student got in touch with the Alexander teacher and said, can you give me Alexander lessons? And I felt my experience of the technique had shown how just totally appropriate the attitude, the framework for thinking, which is the Alexander technique, that potentially useful mind-body coordination development, which every musician needs.
Yes.
It seemed like it should be exoteric knowledge, not esoteric knowledge. And so I decided to see if I could promote it in a new way. And I went to all of the faculty meetings. And so I went to the piano faculty, and I was allowed to do a 5-minute spiel about the technique. And then that I said, has anybody got any questions or comments? And the professors in the meeting said, oh, I had a few Alexander technique lessons when I was younger, and they were really useful. I said, well, great, I'm not surprised. And so thank you very much for that comment. Nobody had any particular questions, as I remember it. Then towards the end of the meeting, or the end of the Alexander part of the meeting, someone would say, and well, if there is some money for more Alexander lessons than are available at the moment, it's so obviously useful for pianists, maybe the piano faculty should get the Alexander lessons. So I said, interesting you should say that, but thanks very much for that comment. So then I went to the string faculty, exactly the same experience there. I did my spiel, the professor said it was really useful for me. Then someone said, if there is some money, it should obviously go to the string department. It's so useful for string players. So I said, oh, yeah, I can see the usefulness. I'm a string player myself. I understand what you're getting at. The same in brass, the wind. The same person was the chair for each of the meetings. And after the faculty meetings, I'd gone to all the faculties. He called me in and said, look, I'm really impressed. Everybody seems to think it's a really good thing. It's obvious now we've got to do something. What are we going to do? And I said, well, I think it should become part of the degree, because some people won't realize how useful it will be to them.
Yeah.
Judging by my experience, I was hoping to get out of pain, but then I found I became a better musician. We should make it part of the training of all musicians. So this chap said, okay, I'll talk to management, see what we can do. And he called me in again. He said, we're very pleased that we've got some money. We've found some money. So you can give a term of lessons to 15 students. And we've decided to make best use of the money. What we'll do is get the professors who say that their students need it most to come and have your lessons. It'll be like a trial.
Mm.
So I said, well, that's no good. That is not the trial we need to do.
Mm.
We need to give it to people who don't think that they need to have Alexander lessons. Because if we're thinking of putting it into the degrees, it's got to make sense to people who don't think, I really want some Alexander lessons.
Mm.
And so he said, well, that's not what we've decided. And I said, well, in that case, let's not bother. And he said, I can't believe, I thought you were really keen. I said, well, I am really keen, but we need to do this experiment to see the value of the technique for all musicians. So he said, well, I'm sorry to hear you say that. But if you change your mind, then you can come back and see me. So I went away, and then I got called back in, and he said, Peter, we're just coming to the end of the fiscal year, and that money will disappear if you don't take it now. And I said, well, are you agreeing to my experiment? And he said, no. We've got to target the students who need it most. And I said, well, that's just so disappointing. And I got up, I walked to the door, I had my hand on the handle, and he said, okay, you can have what you want. So
oh, wow.
it was brinkmanship, and he blinked first.
Mm.
And so that was probably, it was a moment of bravery that was necessary.
Wow.
Then we had this experiment. So all the students whose surname began with A, and I think there were 2 or 3 Bs, made up the 15 on the trial. And at the end of the trial, there was a questionnaire, and the questionnaires came back in, and they were just sort of glowing. It was as if I'd written all the answers myself. And so
how many lessons did they have?
They had a term of lessons, so it was probably 12 lessons.
Okay. Yeah.
So 15 students, 12 lessons. Mm-hmm. And then they answered questions about, was it useful for comfort? Was it useful for your practice? Was it useful for playing music with other people? Different questions. Any other comments? And there were some extraordinary other comments that it was very interesting what came up. So then it was agreed that the money would be found to give all first years, so undergraduate first years, they would get a term of lessons. Mm. So they were starting off with, I can't remember if it was 11 or 12 lessons in a group of 5 to introduce them to the potential of the technique.
Mm-hmm. Group classes.
It was group classes, yeah, which I was really interested to experiment with, to see if there was a way of teaching in a group.
Mm-hmm. You hadn't done it before?
Well,
group
no,
teaching?
Not really. I mean, the training is a group situation, isn't it? So you're seeing how a group can be interactive, and on all the trainings, I'm sure they had activities where they were interactive. And so, there's a little bit of influence from that. I'd done a little bit of group double bass teaching. Mm-hmm. So, I understood about the sort of dynamic and how to deal with tricky customers and easy customers, and how to structure lessons so there was some activity and there was some constructive rest. And so I didn't feel like I was flying blind, but obviously...
Yeah, you were making it up on the spot.
I was making it up, and
yeah,
obviously I didn't know what I was doing really, but who does?
Who does in the beginning?
I don't feel like I know what I'm doing now, but I'm just doing whatever I do, and it seems to be making me happy and the students happy, which is fine. So group lessons, I thought that'll be fun, and the individual lessons for students who really needed it were still going on at the time. So Adam Knott was doing the esoteric work.
Oh, he was still there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was responsible for this experiment, and then I was responsible for starting the first year course. And then students started to ask if I could give individual Alexander lessons. So the management said, well, we can give you an allocation. So then I got a few hours of one-to-one lessons. And then Adam decided that he was going to concentrate more on the training course he was running and do fewer hours at college. And so inevitably I took them over.
Wow, so you were really busy.
Yeah, I was busy.
Right from the beginning.
Yeah. And so I was doing a lot of double bass teaching. And then I took on a lot of Alexander teaching, and I ended up doing four full days a week.
Wow.
At the college. And so I was starting then to sort of fit in playing at the weekends and some evenings. And so, my life had been pretty full when I was training, but it carried on being pretty full.
Yes.
But what a great life. I was having a really good time.
Wow. That sounds intense and very successful. Great. And you had after the training, you were very passionate and so obviously very convincing to the Royal College and the students.
Apparently so, yeah. Apparently so.
Great.
But I'm sure if I really knew what I was doing in those first few years, it would make me think, how did I think that was worth doing? Or, did I really get success from that approach to teaching? It's evolved hugely.
Yeah.
Inevitably, I think we start teaching in the way we've been trained and the way we've had Alexander lessons from, because I went round and had Alexander lessons from various notable teachers, because there were still the first generation teachers around. That was interesting. And then as I was developing my own way, it felt like my life was growing with my approach to teaching the Alexander technique. And I started to realize that what the technique is, it's a framework for thinking about what it is to be human.
Yeah.
And once I started to realize that, and how your emotions and your thinking and your endocrine system and your body in general all interact with each other all the time. And then you're interacting with a musical instrument, the vibrations from a musical instrument, and then you're interacting with other musicians, and you're interacting with the space, you're interacting with the audience, and it's just like your life becomes vibrant in this extraordinary way. What a thing to do, to be a musician. And some people maybe don't need the Alexander technique to realize that, that's what we're dealing with as musicians. But I suppose in a way it's quite good that I had to learn.
Yeah.
Because that might make it more possible for me to understand how to help people to find that way for themselves.
Yeah. Can you talk about how your teaching or your understanding about the technique evolved over all those years?
Well, when I was training, and in the early days, I didn't realize it was a framework for thinking. I didn't realize that the Alexander technique wasn't a thing. I thought it was a thing. And I thought if you understood the principles and you kept applying them, then you get your results. But I certainly don't teach that way. I realize now that it's really helpful to meet the person wherever they are. If you're doing a one-to-one lesson, you need to meet that person wherever they are. If you're teaching a group, you have to meet that group where they are, with their understanding of what it is to be human and what it is to be a musician. And when you realize where they are, then you found the place where you would ideally be teaching. And if the group is disparate, then you have to find a way of keeping people who are sort of a little bit more evolved than the others interested as you go into whatever's necessary for the rest of them. And so it's fascinating. And I would say a word that is really important to me in my teaching and in my life in general is curiosity.
Yeah.
So you need to be curious. Why did that happen? How am I getting that effect? And in quite recent years, I've been asking some students, when I feel that it's appropriate, when they've just played and it hasn't sounded very good, I said, okay, it's really interesting. How did you manage to make that sound? Can you make it again? And seeing their reaction, if they say, well, why would I want to? I don't want to. But understanding how you make it sound on a musical instrument or get a particular effect on a musical instrument or a particular emotional intensity or lack of it. Asking the question, how did you manage that? What was the cause of that? And then when you understand that you've created that, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't act of God or bad luck, it was you, the way you were reacting to your stimuli, whether they're internal or external.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Okay, so that's really interesting, isn't it? What are the implications? Then you can sort of wind back from something that starts off completely musical, say, and you could say, so what do you think was going on in your body that I might have seen? And if they say, I've got no idea at all, I could either say something or say, let's video record. Video recording wasn't very easy when I qualified in 1989. Phones, I didn't know anybody who had a mobile phone, but that was about the time when they started existing. 2 years later, I got a mobile phone myself, but it was a phone that you could actually make phone calls on, not a recording device or video recording device. But now students have got the possibility of using their phone. They've all got a phone.
Yeah.
I remember when I used to, has anybody got a mobile phone? And there'll be a few students in the year. And now it would be a ridiculous question.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a smartphone. They should be using them every minute of their practice. So then how are you getting, so when it looks like that, it sounds like that. Okay. So now you're understanding, you can see why you sounded like that.
Yeah.
So why did it sound so great? Well, look at that. That's how you're using your body. How did you create that? Well, it was the way I was using my mind and body together. So understanding this, taking personal responsibility, a curiosity to understand how you're getting your results now. That sounds just like the Alexander's inquiry. How was he managing to do what he was doing to himself? And then he came up with a process. And that process, it required observation of habit.
Yeah. I
think that's a given, but that's nothing new. That's not unique to the Alexander technique. You go to a sports trainer, they'll be talking about recognizing habits, although they might not say it like that. They'll say, you're doing this. Well, that's recognition of habit, isn't it? So that's nothing special to the Alexander technique. You need to stop doing that. Well, that's nothing special to the Alexander technique. The primary control does seem really significant. So primary control, and the way we teach it, we're using the ready list now. You probably don't need another explanation of the ready list, but it's a fabulous way to start teaching anybody this technique. So you don't say stop or no or inhibit. You say, are you seeing in 3 dimensions. How amazing is that? So people come from the Alexander lesson, and then you say, okay, what are you seeing? How are you seeing? Can you see in 3 dimensions? Are you seeing panoramically? Can you imagine what it would be like if you saw in more colors and in greater depth? And anybody would get interested in that, wouldn't they? Are you breathing freely? Well, most of them would say, oh, no, I don't breathe very freely, especially if I get anxious.
Yeah.
And so, practically every student can say that.
Yeah.
Why are they saying that? Why aren't they working? Who's working on that with them?
Yeah.
I don't think many people are working on it. They just think, oh, it's unfortunate that, my breathing's disturbed when I get anxious. So breathing, why not work on your breathing? It's not the way I was taught when I was starting. And yet it seems so fundamental now.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The basics are the ready list for me. And it's the way I work on myself and the way I work with other people. And you can give them something in their first lesson. And are you balancing? Does your body feel soft and tall, or does it feel tight? Soft and tall is a direction.
Yeah.
But you don't have to say, then you direct yourself. Maybe that's not the best way to start. But when somebody's getting advanced and they may be thinking of training, then understanding the basic idea of direction.
Yeah.
And I'd say there are 2 different types of direction. One where you're just enhancing something which happens without thought or effort to people who are beautifully coordinated. So you see it in great ballet dancers or footballers or tennis players. You just see that soft and tall. Their body isn't rigid, it's flexible, but it's not shortening. It looks like they're always expanding. And that's Alexander had his way of teaching that. Soft and tall seems really effective, especially in the early stages.
Yeah.
And you can keep coming back to the ready list, seeing vision and balancing through soft and tall. And then I didn't used to teach a lot of anatomy. So at my training, I think we had 3 anatomy lectures a year. And so people imagine that Alexander teachers have had a good training in anatomy, but my training in anatomy has been sort of self-inflicted. I've just got interested, so I've been curious.
Yeah.
And certainly going to Barbara Conable, Judith dragged me along to Barbara Conable. I wasn't keen to go, and I didn't have a good excuse for not going, so she took me along. So I saw some Barbara Conable in action, and that was great. I remember looking at the book and thinking, oh, I hate that book. But then I realized it wasn't the content of the book, it's just the presentation I wasn't so keen on. And so body mapping, that's really great. And that took me into looking into anatomy a bit deeper. And the more you know about human anatomy, the more wonderful it is. Because you realize how extraordinary it is that we manage to survive being in the womb and then developing and creating all these bones and ligaments and tendons.
And standing on these 2 little feet.
Yeah, how do we do it? And
quite extraordinary.
And then maybe we even carry on using that changing and developing lump of stuff for up to 100 years. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the basic anatomy is there in everybody. And so interesting when there are differences.
So, and how did the idea of writing the book together come up?
Well, we didn't come up with the idea. Bloomsbury came up with the idea. They decided they wanted an Alexander book for musicians. And they got in touch with Judith. And Judith said, well, I'll be happy to write it with Peter. So then at first I said, I'm not sure I want to do this. It's going to be an awful lot of work. And Judith persuaded me to really take part. And it was 2 years of collaboration to write that book. And so once I realized that what we were being asked to do was to write about how you can make use of the Alexander ideas when you're a musician, and what have we been doing for decades? So, 20 years we've been doing it. So it was really what worked best with the students. And we found that the courses that we were giving were changing year on year, because we were constantly trying to make it better. So we felt it wasn't us having a theory about how to do this. It was practical experience. So this works for wind players, this works for string players, this works for everybody. So we wrote that book feeling confident that it wasn't opinion, it was actually practical experience of trying these ideas out, and this is what works. And obviously when we look back at what we've written, because it's 12 years ago, we'd probably write a different book now if we were doing it.
Well, probably.
But having said that, I also read the book and think, oh, that's really good. It's really great to see that we were thinking that right back then. And the number of people who've been in touch and said that book has been so useful. And it's sold thousands.
Yeah. And it's
tens and tens and tens of thousands of books.
Oh, wow. And it's a kind of self-help book?
Yeah.
Or, so really for musicians to apply the Alexander technique themselves without a teacher.
Well, of course, we say in the book it's best to have a teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a practical thing, and the hands-on is so valuable. I mean, to say that you can read in a book, everybody will get a different message from the same words.
Yeah.
If you read a self-help book, self is very much involved.
Yeah.
And self might actually get what the author meant, but you might come up with something even better than the author meant. So it's a process of reading something that you find interesting. And so it's like the process of teaching. I think a teacher-pupil relationship is the way I see it. It's not, I know and you don't know, so I'll tell you what to do. You do it and then you'll be fine. I'm thinking, I'm interested in this topic, this subject. You're interested in it. We're going to share time together.
Yeah.
And I'll probably express my views more than you will, because I'm being paid for it and you're paying. But if you don't engage in that way, bringing your stuff and in being interactive, then the lessons won't be as good as they could be.
Yeah.
So constantly that is something I feel I have more responsibility than the student to help them be a good student. And the more the student's interactive with me, then I feel the more likely there is to be good and rapid progress.
Yeah. You also started another training, Cranio-Sacral Therapy. So how did that come about? And maybe what are the differences? What are the similarities to Alexander?
Well, I had a little bit of contact with the Cranio world. I think we're very likely to as Alexander teachers. Yeah. And our first boy needed some help with his breathing, and Cranio was really helpful for him. And then I'm aware that some Alexander teachers are Cranio-Sacral therapists as well. And I realized that they tend to have sensitive and good hands. That Alexander teaches any that haven't had the training, they still have brilliant hands. But there was obviously something going on there. And then after I'd been at college for 30 years or something, or 25 years, they said, you haven't done any professional development recently. This was in my annual review. And they said, is there anything you'd like to do? And I said, well, I'd quite like to do a short Cranio-Sacral course. And they said, well, have a look to see if there's a course you'd like to do. And, maybe we'll pay for it. So I said, well, okay, I'll have a look. So I went online, and there was one in North London, and it said 1 week introduction to a practical introduction to Cranio-Sacral training. I thought, well, that's perfect. And, because, I don't know, £600 or £800, something like that. And so the college said, okay, you can do that.
Wow.
So I was sort of vaguely interested, and I went along. And by day 3, I was thinking, whoa, this is something very special. And so I decided I was definitely going to do the training. It was sort of mind expanding. And at the same time, you're putting hands on people in a different way.
Yeah.
You're feeling pulses and you're feeling flow of energy. And so during that year of training, I was thinking, now I understand what's happening when I take someone's leg and it feels like this.
Yeah.
So the idea of the fascia holding emotional trauma with either shallow or deep significance, and it being let go. I'd felt that happening, and I was just thinking, that's weird, or that's nice. And then the person I've been teaching might say, I feel really great after the table turn. And I'm thinking, yeah, actually, I've been doing some cranio work before I realized what I was doing.
Yeah.
But then with the mind taking your attention to the appropriate places, and that's really significant. You put your hands on, you feel a certain energy, and then, especially the way Thomas trains people, you take your attention to the area that maybe is blocked or needs a little bit of attention, so you can join up the energy throughout the body. And so it was very exciting. Sometimes you even feel it with your hands off, and sometimes it's more powerful with the hands off than hands on. And so that certainly seems different to Alexander. And so I felt by the time I'd finished that year's training in Cranio-Sacral Therapy that I was a better Alexander teacher, both intellectually and dealing with customers with hands on, and putting my hands on in a super sensitive and exploratory way, and understanding a bit more of the feedback I was getting from the body of the person. And so I realized that when someone's paying me to give them an Alexander lesson, it should be an Alexander lesson, even if I think they could do with a Cranio-Sacral session. And there's an element of teaching in the way Thomas teaches Cranio-Sacral work. So when you think that someone could do with a certain lifestyle change, you would explore it.
Yeah.
So there's an element of teaching, but it's mostly therapeutic.
Yeah.
And now I realize Alexander work is mostly teaching, but it's not entirely teaching.
Yes.
So the way I see it, there's a small amount of therapy that's going on. You put your hands on it, you make people feel better. And if someone comes along and it's obvious that that's what they're coming for, then I'm prepared to rev that up a bit so I can change the balance a little bit more. And I certainly have the skills to give a bit more therapy, but I'd still draw a line between the two disciplines, the different modalities.
Do you also have clients who only come for Cranio?
Oh yeah.
Okay. How interesting.
It's a great life.
So it was easy to integrate that into the Alexander work, or into yourself, let's say, and you're working with your hands. It didn't interfere at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I think it's a great combination.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that many Alexander teachers do much of a case history when someone comes for their first lesson.
Mm.
In Cranio-Sacral, we're asking about the whole of their life. So emotional, physical, illnesses, accidents, parents, siblings, grandparents. You're looking at a sort of big picture of someone's life. And then you ask them about any illnesses, and it would be really great. And so I'd be inclined to put that into the Alexander training, because there could be some really useful discoveries.
Yeah.
If we could find a way of, even if it's only, is there anything about your health history that I should know?
Well, at least that every Alexander teacher should do anyway.
Yeah.
What else? The bees.
Yes.
The bees.
Yeah.
A little bit about the bees.
Well, I'm passionate about beekeeping.
How did that happen?
It was a relative of Judith's who was a beekeeper in Muswell Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately he died, and his wife, his surviving wife, his widow, said to the family, Barry's bees have got to go, but I'd love for someone in the family to keep them.
Okay.
Does anybody like the idea of beekeeping? Nobody said anything. And so she got back in touch and said, look, nobody's come back to me, but I really don't want to just sell them, because they meant so much to Barry. You know, every night before he went to sleep, he read another beekeeping book. So I said, well, what do you have to do? And she said, well, almost nothing. You just have to put them in the garden. And if you don't look at them very much, you don't get honey. And if you want to get honey, you have to look after them a bit in a particular sort of way. And I said, well, we've got space in our garden. We could pop them in our garden. And so that's what we did. And as soon as we got the bees, I thought, well, now we got the bees, I better read a book. And so there was a book that was recommended. And I read the book and I thought, yeah, I understand that. It was, oh, that's interesting. Yes, great. Well, I'll see what I notice when I go in. And so I started beekeeping. And once I started opening the hive up, it was just totally fascinating. And I've always loved honey. And then I found that virtually everybody loves honey.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful present. And so I started beekeeping. And once you start beekeeping, you realize that every spring you have to deal with the urge of the colony to swarm. So that's when the colony splits into more than one piece, so at least two pieces. And the old queen flies away with half of the bees. That's the prime swarm. So if you're going to keep all of your bees, rather than them flying off and sort of living in somebody's loft space, you have to do beekeeping. So beekeeping in the spring is dealing with the swarming instinct. And so I started experimenting with different ways of avoiding the bees swarming. And that meant that you end up with more than one colony. So each one splits into two. So then what do you do with them? Either you can wait till the end of the season and put them back together again, kill one of the queens, or you can just have more bees. So now I've got bees on the roof, I've got bees at the local allotment, bees in the local ecology park, bees in Oxfordshire, my brother-in-law's, bees in Wales. So I've got bees all over. I've got a bee empire.
A bee empire.
And it's been really interesting since I did the Cranio training, tuning into the energy that is coming from the colony. So I was always aware of the energy coming from the bees, and you can tell the difference between a drone and a worker just by the pitch. But you can also tell the emotional state of the workers. And if they're getting agitated, then the pitch goes up.
Yeah.
And if they're about to sting, then it goes up further. So I was tuning into individual sounds, but now I feel I tune into the energy. So quite often like today, this morning, I went into a colony and I got this distinct feeling that, okay, so it feels like they've swarmed since I've last seen them, or they've superseded the queen. And sure enough, I went through them and they've gone through the supersedure. And so I don't think I would have felt that before my Cranio training. So it's interesting, you open the hive and then you pick up stuff if you're open to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's doing beekeeping training where they encourage you to tune into the energy of the colony. And it is a colony energy.
So being a musician, an Alexander teacher and a Cranio teacher
all
is
the
certainly
same thing,
helpful.
really, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
You're tuning into vibrations.
Yes. Great. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Can you maybe give me, in a nutshell, what is the Alexander technique? A dreaded question.
Well, I think I defined it right at the beginning. It's a framework for thinking about what it is to be human.
Yes.
Looking at the response to stimulus as a human being.
Yeah.
And so the technique is a framework for thinking. And when it comes to applying it, there's all sorts of different things. And teaching it, it's all sorts of different things because it's interactive. If you teach in the way I think is ideal.
Yeah.
But the technique, it's about looking at your emotional responses, how your thinking is working, looking at what you do physically. It's understanding the internal chemistry, the senses. It's all of those things put together, but basically it's a framework for thinking about what it is to be human.
Yeah, that's a very beautiful description.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.
It's a real pleasure.